Let's move on to another important concept in Python, which are functions. And functions are important in any programming languages because it allows you to create modular codes where you can encapsulate important things inside a function, and then you don't need to, and you can reuse that function multiple different times in your overall code. And similar to many other languages, Python also allows you to use functions in your programming languages here. Okay. The functions are essentially defined in Python using the keyword def, D-E-F, right? So here is an example, def my underscore function, braces, semicolon, print hello world. So I have defined my function and I want to essentially, print, the hello world, okay? So if I do that, um, I can use this function inside any other code and call this function, and whenever I'm calling this function, I will essentially print out a hello world. Okay, so let's take this example where I'm defining a function, my function, with arguments data equal to I, and depending upon whether this data is integer, whether this data is positive integer, and so on, I can print different things that I'm interested in. So let me run this block of code, and I run this block code. It essentially has stored the function values. Now the question is, how do I call the functions that I've defined? So now previously I have defined two different functions. Let's see how we can call those functions and use those functions inside a programming code block. So I'm calling, as you can see right here, I'm calling my function, okay, which is my underscore function in double braces. If I use this, essentially this will allow me to call my function and print hello world. So if I do this, I execute this code, it is essentially calling my function, my underscore function, and printing hello world. Similarly, I can also call my function with argument, where now I am providing a list as an argument. So the list L has 1, 2, 3, and I'm passing this list and 2 as an argument to the functions. My underscore function underscore with underscore arg function that I have created above, and in that I am providing this list L and 2 as a values, and then it's giving me an output of 3 because that code function blocks runs there, and it's basically runs there and finds that the output of that function should be 3. That's what is listed here as a 3. Let's move on to another important concept, which are concepts of classes and objects. And essentially, classes are an encapsulations of variables and functions into a single entity. And this is an important concept in object-oriented programming, and Python allows you to create objects and classes, and that helps in many different applications that you may want to create out of Python programming languages. Okay, so a simple way to define a basic class is using this class definition. So you have to say CLASS, which is essentially the construct that you need to use to define a class, and then you can define different other aspect and initialize different other aspect of this class using the structure that has been provided to you in this code block. Okay, so you can use and create different objects and instances of the object, which are shown here in the second code block that you see on the screen right now, and you can also access the variable inside the different objects that is here. So let me run this code block. So this code block essentially defines a basic class. Then I create now an instantiation of that class, and I define that class to and allocate a John string variable. Now if I want to access this, right, this variable inside the object, I execute this code block, which basically prints out John, which has been stored inside that object class that is out there. So again, similar to other programming languages, one of the good things is that Python also allows you to do object-oriented programming, and there are very specific ways of creating those objects, instantiating those objects, and accessing those objects, and all of those functionalities are provided by Python programming languages that are out there. Continuing on the object concept, you can create different objects and are the same class, and however each object contains independent copies of the variables defined in the class. So for example, if I want to create my object y, which is of my class, and my object dot name, that is 10, and if I want to print them out, right, and execute this code blocks, you will see that I'm printing object x and object y names, which are basically the John and Tim. And this is an important concept that you need to remember, that each object contains independent copies of the variables defined in the class that you have. Okay. If you want to access a function inside an object, then you can do that, and you may have defined a function inside, that is inside the object itself, and you can access that using the command that is given here. So this is an example where I want to access the greet function inside the my object x. So I want to greet that person, which turns out to be John, and that's how we have hello John printed out, because the greet function has been defined in the my object class that is out there.